Mr. Mayor, we're live on YouTube.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who have joined us on the live stream, please know that the agenda for tonight's meeting can be found at simpsonville.com/meetings. It's customary for us to have an invocation before each meeting. Typically, we ask for volunteers and invite volunteers from the community to give an invocation that's appropriate for their faith and suitable for the solemn nature of this meeting. I don't have a volunteer tonight, unless there is a member of council or a member of staff who would like to deliver an invocation. Do I have any volunteers? I don't see anybody wildly waving at me asking to do that. So we'll give it a couple of minutes and I'll do an invocation for our meeting. If you would, bow your heads and join me in a prayer. Thank you, God, for bringing us together to do the good work of the city of Simpsonville. We are thankful that we are able to take time out of our busy schedule during this holiday season in order to complete the business of our city. Please look out over us and all of the citizens of Simpsonville, our first responders, our city staff. Watch over us during this holiday time. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, it's 6:30 p.m. I call to order the December 8th, 2020 Simpsonville City Council business meeting. City Clerk Long, would you call the roll, please? You're muted. Clerk Long, you're muted.
Pardon me. Councilmember Gooch? Councilmember Kelly?
Here.
Councilmember Houlihan?
Here.
Councilmember Roche?
Here.
Councilmember Cummings?
Here.
Councilmember Hutchings?
Here.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The First item on the agenda is the minutes from the November 10th business meeting of council. Are there any corrections or revisions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as submitted. After the minutes, we have citizen comments. We always invite the citizens of the community to join us during our meeting and deliver comments. While we're doing virtual meetings, there are several possible ways you can do that. You can call and leave a message on my office phone at City Hall. You can record a message with your electronic device and email it to me or to the Mayor Pro Tem, Jennifer Houlihan, and we will play your message during the meeting. Like I say, we do invite these comments tonight. We have had no one sign up to make comments, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. The first order of business, 5A, is second reading of ordinance number 2020-03, the comprehensive plan. Mr. Knudsen, our Planning and Economic Development Director, would you summarize for us, please?
Sure. So before you is the 2040 comprehensive plan, which is basically our planning strategies for the next 10 to 20 years. You were provided with the supplemental maps last week that kind of help support and demonstrate and identify areas of interest. Nothing has been revised or changed from the plan since the first reading. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer those for them.
Thank you, Mr. Knudsen. A motion is in order. Councilmember Hutchings.
Mayor and Council, I'll make a motion to approve on second reading ordinance 2020-03 comprehensive plan.
Second.
Second.
Okay, who gave me the second? The first person. I think it was Councilmember Houlihan. Yeah, so we have a motion. We have a motion from Councilmember Hutchings with a second from Councilmember Houlihan to approve second reading of ordinance 2020-03 comprehensive plan. Discussion? Councilmember Houlihan?
Yes, Mr. Knudsen, I have a few questions for you now that I've had a chance to further review the comp plan and look at the map. The first question is, I noticed in the comp plan that we've noted that the median household income for Simpsonville has grown to be the highest in our comparison area, that it's considerably higher than Greenville County at large and higher than the state, and that we've had the highest increase after Fountain Inn. So my question there is, does the comp plan in some way address the issue of affordable housing? Because I'm a little concerned about whether or not we're starting to price people out of living in our city.
Absolutely. Under the housing element, we do have an entire objective of improving housing choice and affordability with multiple strategies under it of how we can work with developers and private development to help to accommodate and provide for affordable housing. The affordable housing issue is a regional issue, if not a state one. And so we are seeing an increase in our home values and our taxes and things are going up. And so it may make it a little more difficult for some to find kind of that lower housing bracket they're looking for. But we do have strategies in place that we're going to try to implement and to be able to work into the future to make sure that people are provided for.
Okay. My second question is that Greenville County's comp plan addresses the issue of sprawl, and we have talked about how our comp plan also attempts to deal with the issue of sprawl. And one way in which you've said that we intend to do that is through identifying appropriate infill locations and redevelopment opportunities. And you provided a map for that, map 4.2, I think, where you identified, I think, vacant parcels that are already served by public infrastructure in some way that could be used for development. And then I think existing properties that have been built that could be redeveloped into some other usage, such that we would already have these places. They're already there. They already have the infrastructure in place, and they wouldn't involve going out and creating sort of this new thing and creating sprawl. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. It's to identify and help, especially when I meet with developers that are interested in coming to the community, to provide something visual of corridors and areas that either, as you mentioned, are vacant or maybe ready for redevelopment and reinvestment. So we can kind of help focus and guide that development as opposed to just keep pushing the borders.
Okay. And then in relation to that, is there some of that infill opportunity that is brownfield sites?
We don't have a lot of brownfield left, but yes, a couple of those would be considered a brownfield location.
Okay. And then you talked about the strategies for like economic development, working with developers and that sort of thing with these infill opportunities and redevelopment opportunities. There's also a separate map that identifies neighborhood infill opportunities. And so is that through new development? Is that through rehab of existing housing within neighborhoods? What exactly is the neighborhood infill about?
So the neighborhood infill is identifying those properties that have not been. So you can see that in some of our more established areas, there are some, they may have had a house at one point, but it's no longer there. Again, to kind of point, we've had a lot of interest in people to build in existing neighborhoods and to kind of fill in those places. So again, it's a good visual representation on here are some areas that are left open. Some of them may be viable, others may be privately held for their own future investment, but it is a starting point.
And that's something we're actively going out and seeking.
Yeah, we try to keep eyes on a lot of these properties and see what conditions they're in, what availability they might have. So we do have some information on them.
Okay. And then my next question is about map 8.1, which is about road improvements. And it looks like you've identified 9 intersection improvements on that map, if I'm counting the red stars correctly. And so my question there is, how are those decided, and what is the plan for hopefully actually being able to do something about those identified intersections?
So pretty much every one of those intersections, the DOT owns road. And so part of our objectives and strategies throughout the comprehensive plan is working with those providers. And so what this gives us is something that it gives us a little bit more of a bite when we go and have these meetings for future investment with DOT. Say these are things that our city, our council have all identified as areas that need improvement and need investment. And so it's something that's important to us. So it kind of helps us prove to them that these are areas of interest.
Okay, and then on that same map, we've identified road improvements for Harrison Bridge Road, Fairview Road. It looks like West Georgia Road near Standing Springs out that way. And then West Georgia Road where it turns into, I think, Maple Street going towards downtown, that area.
Yep.
And is that similar in terms of how that's been identified and how you plan to work on making those road improvements?
It is. Those are all, anybody in the community can identify those probably right away as some of our bottlenecks, areas that may need multiple lane improvements, stuff that we, again, want to have identified as something we plan on and want to work on with our with DOT and identify as areas of kind of a high importance for us.
Okay, and then my last question for now is related to map either 8.2 or 8.3. I think it's listed differently in one place and another, but it's about the sidewalks, the existing sidewalks that identifies, and then the proposed sidewalks. And so oh, you good?
Go ahead.
Okay. So it was hard to read that map because I don't see a lot of road names, so it was hard for me to sort of identify maybe where some of those proposed sidewalks really are. Kind of had to guesstimate off of 385 essentially to determine that. But it looks like we've got some good places for proposed sidewalks as well as the multi-use pathways. And then it looks like it's a really good plan for what we would like to see and what we've often talked about in terms of connectivity throughout the city. My question is, in terms of your plan or vision for that, is who's going to be doing those sidewalks? Is that something we foresee the city doing? Is that something we're hoping that developers are going to do as we're working on some of this economic development and housing work within the city limits? How do you see those proposed sidewalks actually coming to be?
So it's probably going to be a combination of all that you listed. So any area that those sidewalks are going to run that are going to be redeveloped or developed for the first time, those sidewalks are identified as ones that we see as of key importance, and so they will absolutely be required for that development. The city, through different grant opportunities, we may seek out money to try to provide for some of those sidewalk connections. Transportation alternatives grants are kind of probably one of the ways we can seek that quicker than others. Also, by us identifying these corridors where we may see these connections of importance, if DOT were to go and do any improvements or repavings or any sort of manipulation of the road, it would give us a good, the word I'm looking for, it'll give us an opportunity to come to them and say, hey, we've identified this as there needs to be further improvement. And so maybe it's a collaboration between the city or DOT does improve themselves. Each area is a little different. And so it's just going to be one of those that as the opportunity arises, whether it's us wanting to move forward with one of the projects on our own or trying to kind of get an improvement with other improvements, each area might be a little different. So it's going to be a combination of probably monies and different people's involvement.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Roche?
I just had one quick question. It is under objective priority investment point 2. I see that you put acquire property for affordable housing. What property does the city currently own that could potentially become affordable housing, and what kind of properties would we be acquiring in the future for that purpose? Do we have anything on the radar is what I'm asking.
So the only viable property we did have, we have Woodside Mill with Habitat going into place. And so that was an opportunity property that we owned. Outside of that, the city does not own a lot of property. The property we have, we've already utilized it with our own facilities or parks, those type of things. So in the future, opportunities may arise where we may be able to obtain properties in neighborhoods or certain corridors. And that can, by us controlling those property values, if we had a developer per se who was looking for affordable housing projects, it's a lot easier for them to deal with the city, who could then possibly donate the property or fair market value it, as opposed to then a developer trying to deal with individual property owners that one might inflate a price, others that just don't want to let something go. And so one of the methods of helping with affordable housing is through the city or municipality owning areas of property that they can then seek out for development of affordable housing. So there's nothing on the radar right now, but those strategies are in place. So that is something we start to look at and try to identify them as they arise.
And just one more question. The issue of parking in downtown, I'm getting a lot of questions about that as the pandemic is starting to, release a little bit of economic, opportunity. People are out shopping more with the holidays, and they're realizing, once again, we have limited parking in downtown. I know that we leased some spaces for that, but what is in this comprehensive plan that you can point to that will become hopefully a permanent facility in the future?
The plan itself doesn't identify specific areas that we would use for parking, but with economic development strategy, it does talk about providing services and infrastructure to support development and economic development. And so that would be something that would fall under those strategies. I do hear a lot about parking in the downtown area, but when you do start to survey things, the lot we lease is never full. The parking behind City Hall does not get utilized. So part of it too is that we as a community need to start rethinking that we can park in front of the place we want to go, and that we are becoming a city where you may need to use a public parking space and walk a block or two to get to where you need to go. So we do. I mean, I've never been downtown at any time where I haven't been able to find a parking space somewhere. We have multiple lots available, but our zoning ordinance specifically does not require parking for our core downtown, and that's so that it can be utilized to be a city center and to be able to kind of help push people to kind of get to that mindset that it is a downtown and they need a park and walk a little bit. So while we do identify we need parking, there's not a specific this lot needs to be parking or this lot needs to be parking. It's kind of as things go, we're seeking those opportunities. That leased space is a great opportunity for us. Hopefully we can turn that into a purchase at some point and be able to make sure that's secured and do further improvements to that property, make it even better than it is.
Councilmember Hutchings? Councilmember Hutchings, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Lost connection. On map 4.2, the infill redevelopment infill map, can you expand a little bit on that area to the east of North Main Street, that rather large block that's identified as residential in yellow?
Basically the largest section of yellow, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So that's just land. It's acreage that's off of Jonesville that has not been developed. It's something that would provide an opportunity for residential. That corridor is not really a commercial corridor, so we would never really see probably any desire for that. So it has been identified as a potential large parcel for residential.
And on the let's see, map, the one that identified the multi-use pathways, could you explain that a little bit? What that refers to?
Are you talking about the sidewalks?
Yes.
So the sidewalk map 8.2 is existing sidewalks, proposed sidewalks. It does show the multi-use path, which we have put in our section of Swamp Rabbit. We're not ready this time to identify any future connection to that. But the rest of the map shows in red what our existing sidewalk inventory is. And so just looking at that, you're able to see where we have major disconnection areas, neighborhoods where they're just not served at all. So there's proposed sidewalk connections to work on over the next few years to be able to provide a pedestrian access. And some of those may actually turn into multi-use paths if there's enough right of way and if the land is suitable for it. But they are identifying future connections. So that's what that map's kind of showing us, the pedestrian scale of things.
Okay, so that is the trail that's identified there. And we're just not ready. We're not ready to identify the future pathway of that.
No, not at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
there any other members of council who wish to discuss or have questions? Any further comments from staff? Okay, then at this time, we will do a roll call vote on the second reading of ordinance number 2020-03, comprehensive plan. Clerk Long, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gooch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Houlihan,
Yes.
Councilmember Roche,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 5B, the second reading of ordinance number 2020-04, Swamp Rabbit Trail. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize for us, please?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As we have discussed previously at the Committee of the Whole and last month's business meeting, Chief Hanshaw and I were asking council to adopt this ordinance so that the police department could enforce uses along the trail, specifically to prohibit motorized vehicles on the trail. That's the main impetus for this, but it would also keep people from selling or soliciting on the trail, and then also limit speed limits for cyclists as well for everyone's safety.
Thank you, Administrator Gracely. A motion is in order. Councilmember Roche?
Mayor, I move that council approve the second reading of ordinance 2020-04, Swamp Rabbit Trail.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Roche with a second from Councilmember Hutchings to approve second reading of ordinance 2020-04, Swamp Rabbit Trail. Discussion? Councilmember Roche?
I've noticed that since the new complex there where Vaughn's used to be has opened, that on weekend night, cars are literally parking on the trail, or they're driving over the trail to park along the tracks. Last weekend, I think it was, they had live music and kind of a soft opening for some of those things, and it was all the way down from it. The traffic kind of picked up the parking situation. The cars filled up where ice cream station was, and then it was just a solid line of cars. And I know that we've had some issues with vehicles driving over the armadillos and breaking them, but short of putting bollards there to keep people from driving over to park in the grass, I don't know how much plainer we could make it, and I'm curious to what admin might have to say about what we can do to, and also address the issue with parking at Vaughn's, because that's becoming a really sprawling complex and they have a very limited parking area.
Okay, so that's a two-part question. I'll address the first part, which is how can we keep vehicles from driving across the trail and damaging the barriers that we've put there. Public Works moved a garbage can up to the intersection where the stop sign is at Trade Street, which seems to have finally indicated to people you can't pull in there, at least at the intersection, and then drive down to park. People, of course, can still drive across the protected barriers and park there if they're so inclined. We have called in a locate for utilities so that we can install no parking signs all along that area. And then the plan is, as people grow accustomed to the fact that they cannot park there any longer, we'll start to pull back on those signs because we don't want a lot of sign clutter. But we do need a steady, straight row of signs, at least in the short term, to keep vehicles from assuming they can park there. We also have ordered a couple of bike racks that look like bicycles. They're actually very cute, and we're going to install those as another measure to keep cars from being able to come in where that stop sign is at Trade Street. To address the issue with parking at Vaughn's, as Mr. Knutson indicated during the discussion of the comp plan, there is plenty of surface parking downtown. I think we will certainly try to get the word out on social media and through all the means that we have at the city. And maybe we can encourage people if you have people complaining to you about the parking situation downtown, the fact that the lot at the old Verdon property that we are currently leasing is seldom full. Even the Senior and Activity Center a little further down Curtis Street, that parking is wide open in the evenings. It's a little bit further walk for folks, but still relatively close if you walk down Curtis and turn and go in the back way down Trade Street to get to Vaughn's. It's a very short walk. So I think it's a matter of educating people that, because we are now an urban center, you can't expect to park right where you're going. And part of the reason people go to downtowns is to people watch and see other people and see other activities that are going on. And so we want to try to get people to change their mindset to understand that you can park a block or two away and take a short walk. The Verdon lot, for instance, is only a block from Vaughn's. You cross over Curtis, you're on South Main. It's literally a block. And it's a pleasant walk. You walk past a lot of storefronts and there are a lot of things to see. You can see the new city signage in front of the ice cream station that tells you what's going on. So it's just changing that mindset, I think, because we don't have those minimum parking standards that we have in other commercial areas. So people need to start understanding that as downtown is growing and adding more attractions in terms of restaurants and service industry and fun things to do, that they are going to have a little bit further walk to get to their destination.
So I asked that because I didn't see anything in this ordinance, which I know addresses behavior actually on the trail. So I don't know if that would be considered a traffic issue, which is already covered with other ordinances that we have, or if there should be something in here that, allows our law enforcement a particular way to address people that drive over the trail to park along the track. Something else that I saw that was super dangerous, some of those vehicles were big. They were long, like, the giant trucks and vans and SUVs. And there was very little space between the trail and the railroad track. I mean, it looked like if a train had come through at that particular time, it would have taken a couple of vehicles and folded up. So I just think we need to be serious about that. And I don't know if that needs to be addressed in this ordinance, but that's what came to mind. So I wanted to put that out there for your consideration. Thank you.
Well, that would be a motorized vehicle driving on the trail to cross over it. So that would give law enforcement the means to write a moving violation for that offense.
Any other members of council with comments or questions? Hearing none, I have one for Administrator Gracely. I don't know if the warehouse at Vaughn's would be interested in doing this on their very busiest nights, but if they were to be interested in providing valet parking, would we allow usage of one of our city lots, either the leased one or at City Hall or at the activity center, to let them have a place to park vehicles that they were taking away from valet parking and then go retrieve them for customers?
Yes, I think that's something we would definitely entertain because we do, as I mentioned, have plenty of surface parking available, and I think we could certainly reserve some spaces for that activity if they were inclined to do that. And I think it's, like I said, it's a matter of educating people and saying, Simpsonville is changing, and that's the beauty of having a bustling downtown, is that you have a lot of choices, but it also means more people are coming and, you may have to go a little further for parking. So we could certainly talk to Thomas Worthen about that if he's interested in doing it. And, we'd be happy through the planning staff and myself to work with him on that.
Also, I believe it's part of our draft downtown master plan to do better signage. And if we include signage for parking, it would make sense to me. Block over to the lot that we lease. I think people would go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, and would be willing to walk 1 block, because it's just 1 block away.
Yes,
Okay.
and that is part of the downtown master plan that we'll discuss, is adding wayfinding signage, and parking signage would be included in that.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other questions or comments from council or comments from staff, then we will move on to the motion here. So on the motion to approve on second reading ordinance number 2020-04, Swamp Rabbit Trail, Clerk Long, would you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gooch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Houlihan,
Yes.
Councilmember Roche,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 5C, commissions and board appointments. Mr. Derby, our planner, will you summarize for us and walk us through this process?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, tonight we do have an election to hold to fill some vacant seats on the Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission. I wanted to receive my staff report. We currently have 1 seat on Planning Commission and 3 seats on Board of Zoning Appeals that are set to expire at the end of this year. We also have 1 extra seat vacant on Board of Zoning Appeals that is set to expire in 2022. The expiring seats at the end of this year, each one of those members have resubmitted their application in hopes of being reappointed to those boards. And with that, I'll go to council to make a motion.
Councilmember Houlihan?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move that council reappoint all of the currently serving Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals members. That would be Mr. Ed Brazier for the Planning Commission, Ms. Sherilyn Carpenter for the Board of Zoning Appeals, Isabel McFadden for the Board of Zoning Appeals, and Dr. Elliot Hirschhorn for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Houlihan with a second from Councilmember Roche to approve reappointing the members of the boards and commissions who are currently serving. Discussion? Councilmember Gooch?
Thank you. I just want to say to those who have signed up to serve, I appreciate it, because it is hard to find folks willing to serve, and these folks have continued to come back and serve the city they live in and that they love, and it makes us all a better place. And I appreciate your service, and thank you for coming.
Hear, hear. Any others? Okay, having just reviewed the motion, I think we can go on to the vote. City Clerk Long, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gooch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Houlihan,
Yes.
Councilmember Roche,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you. I believe that leaves 1 opening. Do I have a motion, Councilmember Houlihan?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move that council appoint former Commissioner Kevin Glenn to the vacant seat on the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is for a 2-year term.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Houlihan with a second by Councilmember Cummings. Did I get that right, Mr. Cummings? Yes, okay. To approve Kevin Glenn for a term on the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a 2-year term. Discussion? Hearing none. City Clerk Long, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gooch, I'm sorry, Councilmember Gooch, Councilmember Gooch,
Councilmember Gooch
One more
responded.
time. Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Houlihan,
Yes.
Councilmember Roche,
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, and congratulations to those of you who were appointed to your terms as commissioners and board members. The final item on the agenda is number E-2020-06, Emergency Ordinance. Administrator Gracely, would you summarize for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is our last meeting for 2020. I think we're all glad to see 2020 coming to an end. As such, our emergency ordinance that we are currently under, that you all just renewed last month, would be set to expire before we meet again in January. And that's why I'm coming to you again seemingly very soon with a renewed emergency ordinance. I know we're all COVID weary and we're tired, but I think we see an end in sight. There's a vaccine coming. We need to get through the holidays and through the cold weather months. I think we can all safely assume that we'll be back to normal in the early spring. I know we're retreating in March, and so I feel comfortable that, we may only need to do this one more time after this, which we will discuss at Committee of the Whole in January. This one will get us through to that fourth Tuesday in January. So I'm asking you all to continue this path that we're on with the virtual meetings specifically. That would be the main reason for the emergency ordinance. As you know, we do have some city staff who have compromised immune systems. I know some of you have had your own battles recently with not only COVID, but other issues. And this format lends itself to being able to continue to meet under those circumstances. And with currently, I think we're at 21.5% positive right now. If you just do the math, odds are pretty good that one of us could seemingly be infected if we did all meet collectively at any point in time right now, while that percent positive is as high as it is. So with that, I'll ask council to please consider this latest emergency ordinance to get us through to the Committee of the Whole meeting in January.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Councilmember Cummings?
I make a motion to approve ordinance E-2020-06 emergency ordinance.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Councilmember Cummings with a second from Councilmember Houlihan to approve E-2020-06 emergency ordinance. Discussion? Councilmember Kelly?
All right, got unmuted before I started talking. I get this, and I respect Diane. I think she's done a stellar job through all this. It's been very difficult for everybody, but right now I'm seeing businesses close because I think they just sometimes they can't stay open. It's fear, but they don't have the luxury of doing business virtually. And I think it's kind of our responsibility in a way to set an example, maybe that we can get through this together, and people not being able to come and comment, seeing the businesses close. Like I said, without this luxury of just, hey, I'm going to do my business virtually. They can't do that. And these are people that put their whole lives into a business, all their probably life savings and everything else, trying to support their families and live a dream. So again, while I trust Diana, I think she's done a remarkable job. And myself being, somebody that's more susceptible to this, that would have complications, I just don't feel real good about it. Us continuing to sit behind a computer. If we don't want our town to have, feel like they got to do the same thing, because they can't.
Councilmember Hutchings?
Well, I'd just like to say, I think as much as anyone would like to see us meeting again face to face, but I understand the spike that we're having in cases and understand the need for consideration of doing this. And I think that this is probably the right course to take at this time. One thing I would like to bring up is it's been brought to my attention that if we do these meetings, try to keep them as much as a face-to-face type meeting as possible. That we keep our cameras on. We've had some, I've had some concerns from some folks that feel like that there's maybe a little bit of lack of transparency if we don't have our cameras on and you can't see everybody's faces and participation in the meeting. So I just like to request that we do that and try to keep it as close to a face-to-face meeting as possible until we can get through these circumstances.
Councilmember Roche?
I would reiterate, I'm as anxious as anyone to start meeting again in person and doing the people's business live and you know, with the public there. I kind of miss seeing people on the other side of the counter. But you know, with the spike that we're recently seeing, as well as flu season, it's really just not a good time to do that yet. So I am willing to extend this one more time and see, you know, what we look like in another 60 days. I just think it would be best. I'm thinking of the people on the city staff as well, with the compromised immune systems and some of us that have had issues. So I'd really hate to exacerbate that or put them in a position where they're unsafe. I think the caring thing to do, the right thing to do right now is go ahead and give us another couple of days or a couple of months to see this thing off. And boy, don't I hope it's over with soon. I know everyone else does too.
Any other comments or discussion from council? Okay, thank you. On the motion to approve ordinance E 2020-06, emergency ordinance, City Clerk Long, will you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gooch? I'm sorry, I can't hear Councilmember Gooch.
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Houlihan?
Yes.
Councilmember Roche?
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings?
Yes.
Councilmember Hutchings?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Yes.
Motion carried. And thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk Long. That concludes our business for this evening. And if there is no objection, we will consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Everyone, see you next year.